How's it going, everyone? This is Ken. The last I reported to you was at day 51 of my recovery. Um, it's been a little while. Today is around day 310. So many months since my surgery. Um, I guess let me back up to where I left you off. I just started doing physical therapy, and I think I ended up doing that for a month or 2 months, and just saw very slow, steady improvement, increased range of motion, increased ability to lift things, and increased ability to kind of resume the normal activities that I had been unable to do. I remember a very specific kind of turning point where I thought like, wow, I'm actually like really getting better, and I started to do some push-ups. I bought these kind of push-up things, and it makes it a lot easier to do push-ups than having my hands flat on the floor. This kind of position makes it a lot easier. So I was able to do push-ups for like the first time in like a year and 3/4 or something like that, and I felt like my upper body muscles were being used, and I just ran out the door and went on this bike ride and was just so full of energy. I may have even actually roared, in fact. I was just so, I don't know, it was an amazing moment when I felt like I was finally getting past this horrible injury and the surgery that followed. At around month 5, I started playing ice hockey. I haven't played ice hockey in 13 years, and I guess that's the other thing about this injury was it did kind of make me think about things differently. Like while I was injured and not able to do much with my hands, not able to do much with my upper body, and again, like washing the dishes was painful, so there was a lot I could not do. It just made me want to do all the things that I'd long fantasized about doing. So I started playing hockey again. And I started learning the Irish bagpipes. Garden, I built a chicken coop. This was stuff that all happened over this past year, but they'd been things I'd wanted to do for a really long time. Things I may not have done if I didn't have the injury in the first place. So it kind of just made me think differently and make me want to use my body while I have a functional body. When I started playing hockey at the 5-month mark, I remember my first game, and my wrist, my injured wrist, it didn't feel painful afterward. It just felt exhausted. It felt like it had just run a marathon when the rest of my body had just gone on like a jog. And that changed over the course of the season and up until now, where it doesn't necessarily feel that way. And I remember at about the 8-month mark of post-surgery, I went to Denver to help a friend move houses, like literally, move all his couches, move all his furniture, all, a giant truck of boxes, putting it in the truck, and then taking it out into this new home. And I remember like feeling like my wrist was exhausted. Again, not sore, just exhausted. But I was able to do that for over a series of days. So even though it was kind of tired and would get exhausted, I was able to do these things that require a lot of range of motion and a lot of wrist strength. And again, like I said, I started learning an instrument that requires your wrist. I was even chainsawing trees, and holding a chainsaw that requires a lot of stability and range of motion and stuff like that. I bought some barbells. When you watch your upper body muscles just completely disappear when you have an injury like this, I just fantasized about having muscles again. So I bought some barbells, and I'm not a workout junkie, but I can do 30-pound curls with ease, and I could probably force myself to do 35 or 40-pound curls without feeling any pain in my wrist. While we're talking about it, let me kind of just show you my range of motion. Here's my bad wrist. Here's my wrist that's always been fine. I can kind of turn it flat like that just fine. I can turn it completely upside down. I feel a tiny bit of strain. I feel a little bit more than a tiny bit of strain in my bad wrist. But as you can see, it's almost like a completely equivalent range of motion. I can go kind of straight up, no problem. I can go straight down, no problem. And I can do pretty much everything. So I'd say like my range of motion is overall probably about 95%, and my strength, I don't know, 95% or more. So I don't think there's going to be any long-term issue here. I think for the most part, it's going to be just fine. And maybe if I was like a mechanic and had to kind of like constantly use my wrist and contort it and use a lot of strength, maybe that as a career wouldn't work. But for someone who types a lot, no big deal. For someone who has a lot of physical and athletic hobbies, no problem at all. So even though I have one wrist that's 100% and one wrist that's at worst 95%, it's no big deal. Like, I think I could live the rest of my life just as happily with a 95% wrist. I guess I should briefly talk about kind of my emotional state kind of at this stage. And I don't know, I remember when I had the injury, I couldn't think about anything else. Like, every hour of every day, it went through my mind. It was just like, what is the injury? What do I got to do to fix it? Am I going to have this for the rest of my life? Am I going to have to change my lifestyle? And then after the surgery, it was, I was mostly optimistic and hopeful. However, you still wonder what it's going to be like if you're ever going to fully recover. So it just dominates your life. And like, when you start a conversation with someone, like, that's what you want to talk about. You like want to talk about your injury because it's just kind of like a dominating narrative in your life. But now, 300 days after the surgery, I don't think about it anymore. In fact, I try to remind myself about it because I want to be continually grateful for not only a successful surgery, but just being a healthy person. And it takes a little bit of deliberateness to kind of keep that in your life on a daily basis. And frankly, I think I'm kind of failing at that, but what the hell? I have 2 functional wrists, which is just absolutely wonderful. Any advice I can offer you for someone who's about to go through this surgery, I would say, number 1, eat extremely well. Look up a good diet and go on it. a vegetarian Mediterranean low carb diet has really worked for me. Eat a lot of vegetables, olive oil, nuts, fruit. That was that's always been a big part of my diet, and I was especially vigilant when I was on my um, when I was in the intense stages of my post surgery recovery. Um, I ate a lot of oranges. Again, I'm not sure if that did anything. I'm really not convinced of anything until I have like scientific proof of it. But anecdotally, um, and maybe just kind of had a placebo effect, but there may be something to oranges. So I was eating like orange juice or a bunch of oranges every day. I'm talking like 6 oranges for the first 2 weeks at least. Um, uh, I'd say get any exercise you can. You're not gonna be able to do anything with your upper body, but I did a lot of walking. And after about a month, I couldn't swim, but there's a river nearby here in North Carolina, and I would go walk down to it and just sit in the river and just move my wrists up and down and kind of go back and forth like this. And um, I found that to be very therapeutic. It kind of added some resistance, and it was just really pleasant. Um, Take it slow. I mean, when your doctor says don't lift anything heavy, don't bother it, I think that's, wise advice one must accept. Um, I don't know if I did all of my physical therapy exercises every day. I think they were asking for like 3 different rounds of physical therapy, and maybe some days I kind of um, didn't follow that advice too carefully, but I certainly did it every day, probably a couple times a day. That was my number one life goal, was to get over this wrist surgery, so it was a real focus. Um, I should also say that, I didn't get through this alone. I had a wonderful surgeon, Dr. Timothy McGrath. Just feeling a little emotional talking about it, but he did just a marvelous job on my wrist, and um, you know, helped me become a functional human being again. Um, uh, Diane Ralph, she was my physical therapist. She was very kind and patient and encouraging and optimistic, and she would work with me once a week. Um, my parents, they let me live with them as I went through this recuperation period. Sent me back into a weird stage of boyhood when I was, 33 years old, and living back with my parents in my boyhood room, and for the first couple weeks relying very much on my mother, especially for food and carrying things for me. So it was just something I had to go through, but something I'm really thankful for. My friend David, I lived with him for about a month during, those first few months of recovery, and I remember, I like doing outdoors work at his home, and I remember I had to ask him to, lift the kitty litter box for me because it was, I couldn't lift anything that heavy, and for about a month he took care of me, and I was completely worthless. So I couldn't have done this without the help of some people, and I have to thank President Obama for the Affordable Care Act. which made this a really affordable procedure. In another situation, this would have just completely financially devastated me, but I was able to kind of get through a long period without working. I couldn't work for the National Park Service, which I usually do during the summers. So it was a period when I wasn't making any money at all, and I didn't really have to worry too much about the finances, which a lot of people can't say. So I'm thankful for all of that. I'm thankful to have my wrist back, and I'm thankful that I don't have to think about this injury. And I think one of the biggest benefits of it is just being able to kind of imagine a future that you want to live in. You know, like beforehand, it messed with an injury like this. It messes with your identity. If you're athletic and outdoorsy, and you imagine yourself doing physical things, you get paid by doing physical things, or you want to imagine yourself building a tiny house of your own, or a cabin. Like, even if you don't do those things, just being able to imagine doing them is enlivening. It's important. It brings you excitement and meaning. And when you have an injury of any sort that makes you doubt your ability to do those things, you have to ask yourself not only what can I do, but who am I if I can't live the life I'd previously imagined for myself? Maybe I need to completely imagine my life and my future with a disability. So now that this injury is solved, I can look at the future with a kind of a sense of limitlessness again, in that I feel like I can do anything, whether it be building a tiny house for myself, or a cabin, or going on some big adventure, or anything like that. So I guess I'm cured, and unless something terrible happens, this is the last you'll hear from me. So if you're going to take the surgery, if you're going to have the surgery, there's a lot of negative stuff on the internet, and I'm not discounting or dismissing that. A lot of people have been screwed by this injury and not helped by this surgery. Maybe they've even been screwed even more by this surgery. So let this chronicling stand for what it is, and that's just one person's successful recovery from a really nasty injury. So good luck, and eat your oranges.